Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Crescent Stone Reread. I am your host and the author, Matt Nicolatos. Good to see you all. I hope you all find... I didn't have time today to run and reshare it on social media, so I hope you're able to find this so that you can watch. Otherwise, I will be quite lonely, in which case I might have to stop and start over. I see someone has joined us, so that's good. This chapter, we're going to be starting in chapter 14 today. Oh, I don't know if you heard that, but I have a special guest for later. How are you all doing? Say hello. Would love to hear from you. I was running behind a little bit today because I had a work Zoom call. Can you believe it? As well as this morning, we also we're recording our podcast every Wednesday morning at 8:30 Pacific. We record our podcast. It's called The Fascinating Podcast. This season on The Fascinating Podcast, we've been focusing on, you've heard people talk about spiritual deconstruction, probably, which is this idea of taking apart all the things that you know and have heard and have been taught about spiritual things. We're talking about spiritual reconstruction. What do you do after that? How do you rebuild a healthy, thriving spirituality after you've kind of questioned all the things that you have gone through in the deconstruction? Okay, Dr. Awesome is here. Internet is at speed. Well done, Dr. Awesome. The Scales family is here. Hello, Scales family. Always good to see you. Milena says, nice hat. Thank you. I was cleaning the living room today and realized I had left this hat down here at some point. It's actually a hat I wear when I'm working outside mostly. And I put it on my head so I would remember to put it away instead of setting it down somewhere here in the house. So that is good. Deborah says, hi, Matt. Thank you for your time. It's my pleasure. I enjoy being with you all. So glad to be here. The Sims are here. Excellent. And I'm really loving the reconstruction series on the podcast. Why, thank you, Joanna. Yeah, we're having a lot of fun. Today's episode is about, well, it'll come out this coming Monday. Today we talked about fake news, how to recognize it when we have personally fallen for it before, and how to make sure, that you don't fall prey to it, which is really fun because one of my co-hosts, Clay, is a former history prof, and another one, Kathy, used to be a reporter. So really interesting insights. And then, of course, JR and I are just people who have opinions. So we shared thoughts. Let's go ahead and jump into the chapter. Like the last 2 days, we're only going to do half a chapter. Before we do, though, look, special guest. Oh, it's my stuffed delightful glitter lady. You can even see, I don't know if you can see, actually. Look. Can you hear her? That's actually the sound that baby rhinos make. It sounds like somebody's letting air out of a balloon. I love it. Patrick Fogarty says, hey, Matt. Hey, Patrick. How's it going? Okay, let's jump in. We're reading from chapter number, dropped my bookmark out. Hold on. Chapter number 14, which is called Night's Breath. We're just doing half the chapter again. We're coming up to the end of this first part of the book and kind of a dramatic moment with some big changes. So the chapters are a little long. So the story so far, for those who are just catching up, Madeline Oliver has a terminal lung disease. She can't breathe well. A magical stranger from another world called the Sunlit Lands comes and says, if you will serve us for a year, the Elenil, fighting these horrific monsters called the Skim, 1 human year will heal you completely. She agrees to go. Her good friend Jason, who's actually her chemistry partner, goes with her. And together they arrive. He makes a deal that he'll get a unicorn, which we met in the last chapter, which looked kind of like this, only much, much larger. Note the only one horn. That's how we know it's a unicorn. And Jason also got a deal for some chocolate pudding, which is good. where we are in the story now, they've each seen the skim, Madeline and Jason is out on the battlefield, having decided to go with his roommates, Kakoa and David, to fight the skim, because why not? It's like a video game, practically. They say you can be healed if you're broken. And he's going to ride his unicorn to battle. Madeline is up on the wall watching. And at the end of last chapter, she was starting to feel kind of sick about it, that Elle and Elle are sort of having a little party watching these people fight. And she's asking, why are all the key people involved in the reason for this fight just sitting here watching and listening to music and drinking and eating food? And while others, these human kids, are fighting on their behalf. And it feels like a Roman, like a Colosseum. So that's where we left off. And we're going to pick up chapter 14 with Jason out in the midst of battle. So here we go. Chapter 14, Night's Breath. The skim were evil things, their hearts filled with wickedness and foul deeds. From the Ordering of the World, an L&L story. Jason couldn't find delightful glitter lady, though he did occasionally hear what sounded like someone playing a bagpipe half underwater, which he assumed was her. He did, however, catch sight of the Knight of the Mirror again. The battle was so thick that if he kept an eye out for any unengaged skim and avoided them, he didn't have to fight much to make it through the crowd. He was getting the hang of it. His fear and worry sluiced off him, his muscles relaxed, and his ability to focus came back. His hands weren't shaking anymore. He was glad his helmet was on, though, as one skim warrior knocked him pretty well with a broadsword. The Sunlit Lands guy who could fly, Jason couldn't remember his name, swooped down and took the skim away. The skim roared horrible things he would do to Jason when he got back on the ground. Jason knew he was getting targeted by the skim because of his white armor, but the armor also made it easier for his side to keep an eye on him. They were watching out for him. A quick count of his arrows showed he only had 9 more. He looked for a discarded weapon, but slowing down was an easy way to become a target. He ran toward the Knight of the Mirror. After a moment, he noticed Bailea running alongside him, her cockery spear tucked beneath her right arm. "Head back toward the city wall," she shouted. "Now!" What's happening? The skim are targeting the more heavily magical soldiers tonight. They're trying to not even engage with the Knight of the Mirror. There is an evil plan in motion, and I cannot see the shape of it. The knight has ordered the less experienced to fall back to the city gates. But I can help. The flying teen dropped down beside them. The black skulls, you can't see it from the ground, but they're triangulating on Shula. That's Madeline's roommate. I think they're trying to kill her permanently. Who's Shula? The burning girl, he said. Bailea, try to slow down one of the skulls. I'll see if I can distract the second one. Shula should have a chance against 1 instead of 3. Bailea's eyes grew wide. Jason followed her gaze. She had sighted one of the black skulls. The skull was riding a possum the size of a horse, its long rodent snout covered in blood, its red eyes filled with bloodlust, its bald tail whipping the air. The skull itself wore a white robe, the hem of which was filthy with mud. It wore black gloves and boots, and on its head was an antelope skull, painted a shining black, the curved horns rising several feet. In its right hand, it held aloft a sickle. "Run, Jason!" Bailea sprinted, leaping like a deer over soldiers from both sides. Jason knew she meant for him to run for the gate. Everyone had warned him to stay away from the black skulls, and his own brain was screaming at him to do as he was told, run for the wall. But something else, a deeper voice, said that this was the whole reason he was here, to protect people. What if Madeline was out there somewhere? He tightened his grip on his bow and ran after Bailea. Bailea ran full speed at the black skull, sliding to the ground in front of the charging possum. Jason opened his mouth to scream a warning, but she crouched calmly in the beast's path and at the last possible moment jabbed the curved, bladed side of her spear into the mud, dropped to her knees, and tilted the blade forward. The possum slammed into the spear. The blade sank into the possum's chest, and it let out a horrible scream as it collapsed, crushing Bailea beneath its heavy corpse before skidding to a stop. The black skull stood slowly, apparently unharmed, its towering horns rising to their full height with a slow implacability, the blade of its sickle glinting in its hand. It turned, the black cavities of its eyes regarding Bailea. Distracted from its mission, it stepped toward the woman who had dared impede its path. Bailea shoved the possum's head to one side, but to Jason's horror, she didn't stand. She scrambled backward until she found her spear broken in half now and used what remained of it to get to her feet. Her left leg hung limply, twisted at an angle that made Jason sick. She dropped her spear, reached behind her back with both hands, and pulled 2 curved daggers out of her sash. Why am I standing here doing nothing? A distant buzzing echoed in Jason's ears. His thoughts came thick and slow. The black skull had crossed nearly half the distance to Bailea. Shake out of it! Jason, still a solid 20 feet behind Bailea, slipped an arrow from his quiver and onto his bow. His heart beat so hard against his chest, he thought it might break through. He felt the magic clear and strong and opened the conduit through his tattoo as wide as he knew how. The confidence of an expert archer flooded him, and the sounds of battle fell away until he saw only one thing, his target, the heart of the black skull. He wouldn't allow that thing near Bailea, wouldn't let it hurt her. He breathed once, twice, then held his breath and loosed the arrow. It flew past Bailea so close the fletching could have brushed her cheek. It sank into its mark, and the skull stumbled backward. It did not fall. It righted itself, snapped the arrow from its chest, and stepped forward again, sickle raised. "No!" Jason shouted and shot another arrow, then another, and another. 5, 6, 7 arrows, and still the black skull walked, its robe an explosion of arrows, but not stained with a single drop of blood. 2 more arrows, and then Jason was out, and the thing still stalked toward Bailea. Jason ran between them. "Stay away from her!" The skull laughed, and a chill ran down Jason's spine. He balled his fist, ready to fight the thing to the death. He heard Bailea shouting at him, "Get back!" But it barely registered in the face of those horrible empty eye sockets and the towering horns of the skull. A meteor streaked between them, and its supercharged air blew Jason back. He stumbled into Bailea, and they fell to the ground. From the center of the fire, a girl's face turned toward them. "Shula!" Bailea shouted. "It's a trap!" "Run," the flaming woman said. "I'll take care of him." Another bright, cascading explosion of fire came from Shula, the hot air singeing Jason and Bailea. Jason helped Bailea move farther from the flames, but the black skull advanced despite the heat. The black skull caught on fire, its robes alight, the arrows like torches in its chest. The sickle fell from its hand, the blade red from the flames. It grabbed hold of Shula with both hands. She kicked at the skull, but it didn't respond to the blows any more than it had responded to the arrows or to the fire. The skull's laughter came rolling over the battlefield again, and it called out in a loud voice, "Victory!" The skim roared and echoed the black skull's cry, smashing weapons against their shields and helmets as they stopped fighting and began a sudden retreat. "Victory!" they shouted. "Victory! Victory, O people of the shadow!" The black skull, still aflame, ran, dragging a struggling Shula. A wolf loped up alongside the skull, and the skull pulled itself onto the wolf's back. Bailea grabbed Jason's arm so hard it bruised him. "Jason, if tonight's battle was only to capture Shula, then we must frustrate their plan." She pushed a carved dagger into his hand. "Slow them however you can. The Knight of the Mirror will come to your aid." There was no time for instructions or second thoughts. Jason strengthened his grip on the dagger and ran as fast as he could, passing wounded skim warriors and monstrous limping creatures. A desperate need to stop the black skull washed over Jason. He'd been telling himself that this wasn't his battle, but now this horrible magical creature had grabbed some Earth girl and was dragging her across the field, headed to a terrible end, no doubt. And sure, the girl could light on fire, but that didn't mean she wasn't a human being. And it didn't mean Jason wasn't going to do everything in his power to help her. He tried to run faster, but he kept stumbling on the broken bits of weapons and bodies on the field. If something didn't give soon, he would lose them. He couldn't keep up with the wolf. Then, as if in answer, the wolf caught fire. It let out a long, plaintive howl and collapsed beneath the skull. Jason didn't lose a step, just kept running straight ahead. The black skull paused for a moment, getting a better grip on the nape of Shula's neck, then strode forward through the battlefield, dragging Shula behind him. Jason was close now, close enough he thought he had a chance if Shula could slow the skull down just a minute longer. 30 seconds and he would be there. His skin hurt from his burns, and he could feel Shula's heat growing as he got closer. He settled his grip on Bilea's dagger and got ready to use it. A body slammed into him from the side. It was a skim warrior, one gray fist holding a club nearly as tall as Jason. It growled, and its foul breath struck him like a blow just before the club did. Knocked off his feet, Jason landed on another fallen soldier. Whether human or skim, he couldn't say, but the skim warrior was in front of him already, the club swinging toward Jason's chest. He tried to roll away, but he was too slow. He felt his rib cage go, and a cold breeze settled onto him. Shula's heat moving away. So this is how it was going to end. Jason felt a distant regret, cushioned by the thought that he could rest now. He wouldn't have to worry about his parents anymore, wouldn't have to carry his grief about Jenny. He didn't need to save Shula or Madeline or anyone. He could just let it all go. A horn sounded in the distance, and the skim's head snapped up. It gave Jason a quick sideways glance, but the horn sounded again. The skim grunted, kicked him once, and loped after the other skim. Jason still had Bilea's knife. It was loose in his hand, but he couldn't tighten his grip. He had lost his, what was it? Unicorn? And the burning girl. But he still had other things like this knife. But someone would come to get it. They would have to, because his legs weren't working. In fact, his arm wasn't moving either. His thoughts seemed to be coming slow, like in a dream or being half awake. Where was his unicorn again? He thought he heard her trumpet in the distance. He closed his eyes, and the darkness swept him away. This would be a natural place to stop, but we're going to read a couple more pages, or tomorrow is going to be much too long. So let's switch over to Madeline and see what's happening. Madeline watched in mute horror as Shula was dragged across the battlefield by a black-skulled warrior. "No doubt a message," Galenia said. "They begin the battle saying we've stolen their artifacts, and they end by stealing ours." Hearing Galenia call the humans artifacts sent a chill down Madeline's spine. The skim sounded retreat with a series of shouts about their victory, and then a thin, shrieking blast from something like a trumpet. The battle shifted as the Elenil army targeted the skim, who carried the Elenil's magic users with them. Galenia stood, and one of her attendants immediately draped a thin satin stole over her shoulders. It nearly touched the ground. "Come," she said. "We shall walk a while among the corpses." Madeline shivered. The thought of walking out on the battlefield among the dead filled her with horror. But Galenia said it with a complete lack of passion, like she was inviting someone to take a stroll around her neighborhood. Madeline shot a look at Honnelly, hoping for a reprieve. Instead, he said, "I must speak to Rondello. Galenia will return you home." So, Madeline would go and walk among the corpses with Galenia. Two human attendants flanked them as they descended the stairs and followed the wide avenue through the gate. A ragtag stream of wounded soldiers headed the opposite way, entering the city. Two people held up a third. A woman helped a man, no, not a man, he looked to be 12 or 13, hobble inside. "We'll help them directly," Galenia said, "but first, the more heavily wounded." She strode straight toward the center of the battlefield, where the fighting had been most vicious. They passed broken spears and crushed pieces of armor. People sprawled on their backs, groaning, trampled in the mud. There was a metallic tang in the air and an underlying smell of smoke. The sound of the skim's retreat came to them like distant waves beating on stone. Galenia stopped in the center of the field, her satin stole stained where it had dragged along the ground. A teenage boy lay at her feet, the shaft of a spear jutting from his chest. His dark hair was plastered to his brown skin, his eyes closed but moving rapidly beneath the eyelids. He was breathing, a slow, irregular, rasping sound. Galenia knelt beside him and put one gloved hand lightly on his chest. "We start here." To her attendant, she said, You know what to bring me." Madeline's heart climbed into her throat. The entire field looked like a trash heap, only it was people and creatures strewn across it. To her left was some sort of wooden wagon, arrows stuck in the sides like porcupine quills. There were hands reaching out from beneath it, and a tall, heavily muscled beast, neither human nor skim, collapsed beside it. "Come here, girl," Galenia said. Madeline could barely respond. Her mind felt distant and slow, but when Galenia snapped her name, she made her way to the Elna woman's side. The attendants had returned, working together to drag a skim warrior beside the broken boy at Madeline's feet. One of the skim's jagged tusks was broken, and black tattoos crisscrossed its skin. It was unconscious. A great gash from a sword had parted its filthy tunic and torn across its chest. "Take hold of the spear in the boy's chest," Galenia said. "I have broken the blade from the other side." Madeline goggled. "What?" But Galenia did not repeat herself. She was demurely removing her gloves. The attendants looked away, and Galenia snapped at them to find more wounded. "There are some we can save," she said, tucking her gloves into a small pocket inside her stole, "and some who can save others. Now take hold of the spear. Good. When I say, pull it out. It will require some strength." The wood of the spear was rough and thicker than Madeline had imagined. Something with large hands must have held this weapon. She accidentally jostled the spear, and the boy groaned. Galenia gave her a sharp look, then put one hand on the boy's chest and one on the skim warrior's chest. Galenia's hands were not flawless white like her face. A network of golden tattoos covered each hand like spider webs. Her palms, fingers, even fingernails were laced with intricate patterns and intersections and partings. A glowing pulse branched out through the tattoos, and a small wave of heat touched Madeline's face. "Pull," Galenia said. The spear did not budge. "Harder." Madeline felt the spear give. The boy arched his back and screamed, "No need to be gentle, girl. Tear it out of him." Angered by her inability to pull the spear free and the string of instructions from Galenia, Madeline snapped. She put one foot on the boy's chest, leaned back and pulled with all her might, stumbling backward with a bloody spear shaft dripping in her hands. The wound in the boy's chest closed like water over a stone. The skim's wound simultaneously widened. The gray-skinned warrior thrashed for a moment, Galenia's hand still resting on its chest, and then it fell still. The boy opened his eyes, which widened upon seeing the luxuriously dressed Elena woman leaning over him. "Lady Galenia," he gasped. He leapt up and knelt before her. "Thank you, lady." "Your name, sir?" "Ricardo Sanchez, lady." "You have served us well, Ricardo. Now join my attendants and gather more wounded. Start with those with the most grievous wounds." "Yes, my lady," he said. He bounded into the junkyard of the battle. The skim soldier did not move, did not breathe. "Did you?" Madeline cleared her throat. "Did you kill him?" Galenia gave her a curious look. "His people abandoned him. He would have died in a few hours. I sped his death and healed one of our soldiers. It was a mercy twice over. Does it displease you?" Did it displease her? What a strange question. Of course it displeased her. It seemed unjust in every possible way to heal a human warrior by killing a skim. But Galenia was right. The skim hadn't looked like it would last long. Madeline didn't know much about punctured chests, but the boy hadn't looked like he would last long either. So maybe instead of letting two people die, she had helped one live? "I helped the skim wounded as well," Galenia said. "Their people have abandoned them. We take them in to the court of far-seeing and rehabilitate them, give them meaningful roles in the sunlit lands. It's more than their foul kinfolk have ever done for them. Something seems wrong about it." Madeline couldn't figure out how to say it, but a sick feeling in the pit of her stomach threatened to spread to her whole body. "I am a healer," Galenia said. "I had hoped you might assist me during your allotted time." To find someone with healing potential is rare among the Elenil, and I see that potential in you. But perhaps you do not have the stomach for it. No matter. Today you shall at least go among the wounded and find those I may help. You want me to find the wounded for you? Galenia nodded once impatiently. Even if I don't heal them, we must take them within the city walls, agreed? Look for the most egregiously wounded first. I cannot save them once they pass death's gate. Ooh, the end of today's reading. There we go. Okay, we had a couple comments here. Deborah says, I'm having a chocolate pudding cup for Jason. Good for you. Chocolate pudding cups for everyone. Pass them around. And let's see what Joanna said. She said, that doesn't sound promising, Joanna. I hope you're well. Scales family yesterday wanted to know why Delightful Glitter Lady, why I wrote when we came to the big reveal with the unicorn that it was a rhino. My daughter just said, no, it's a unicorn. One of the things early on, I don't know if you remember this in I think it's chapter 5, when, Hannah just asked that. Hannah, why did you decide to make the unicorn a rhino? It's a great question, Hannah. I don't know if you remember back when Jason is first talking to Hanali in the hospital room, and Madeline is saying, what is the big deal? What's the worst that could happen? And Jason says, you could get killed by a dragon. And they're like, well, maybe there aren't any dragons. And they ask Hanali, are there dragons? And he doesn't seem to know what they're talking about. So Jason kind of explains, it's a giant lizard and it breathes fire. And Hanali goes, no, we don't have those. One of the things that just struck me as funny was the idea that the Elenil just aren't very good with animals, like telling which kind of animals which. They just don't, it's just not their thing. Maybe they're not paying attention. Maybe they don't care about how humans talk about it. I don't know. But it became kind of a running joke. And this was kind of the first big payoff, is this moment when, it's like someone explained a unicorn to you. And this is what you found. You know what's interesting, Hannah? If you look, I'll see if I can find one for tomorrow. If you look at there used to be things in medieval times called bestiaries. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it was like a book of animals where people would draw pictures and then write all about different kinds of animals, what they were like, because people couldn't travel very far usually in their lives. And crossing the ocean was a big deal in medieval times. There wasn't the internet, obviously. So someone would come from a far off land. Someone went to Africa, let's say, and they come back to Britain, and they're trying to explain all the animals you've seen. Like, there's horses, but there's white. They're white and black. They have stripes, and there are these big beasts that just have a single horn. Una meaning one, corn meaning horn. Right? They're talking about rhinoceroses. So even you can find these medieval pictures of unicorns that actually are rhinoceroses. And then you start looking at rhinoceros myth, unicorn myth, find a lot of interesting things like that. So anyway, I just thought it'd be fun. And with Jason, the more like goofy things I can throw at him, the more fun he is. And you'll see as the book progresses, he's not disappointed in the end that he has a unicorn that looks like this instead of the white horsey looking ones. And if you're worried, if you're like, I like the white horsey unicorns, there are some coming later in the book. So hang in for that. And then Joanna says, definitely no dragons in this world. Exactly, Joanna. Well, my friends, as always, a pleasure to be with you. Don't forget that on Friday, we are going to have YA author Ash Parsons with us talking about her book, Girls Save the World in This One, a really fun book about fighting zombies with all your BFFs. And also, as always, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. It is a great favor to me if you do any of those things. It helps our posts. If you're on Facebook, if you comment, helps other people see it. And obviously, when you subscribe, whether on Facebook at facebook.com/MichelatosBooks or on YouTube at youtube.com/MattMichelatosBooks. My daughter's making a lot of noise in the kitchen. This is part of social distancing. Go somewhere else. She's laughing. We're joking. YouTube.com/Matt Michelatos Books. You can subscribe there, and then you'll get a little update every time we're putting a new live video out. As always, if you want to hear the audio book of The Crescent Stone, really well done by Natasha Sudek, that's available at oasisaudio.com, and Tyndale.com is taking orders and sending books right now, not just Crescent Stone, but the sequel, Heartwood Crown, and all of Tyndale's other books, including, I think this one was mentioned. I'm going to reach out and see if he wants to be on the show. I bet he will. That Larry the Cucumber, Mike Naraki, wrote a series of books called The Dead Sea Squirrels, about some squirrels that got frozen in the Dead Sea during the first century, and they are rehydrated in modern day. It's a funny little series of books. And I'll reach out to Mike and see if he wants to come be with us at some point. So that's it for today, my friends. Be safe, be well, take care of yourself, wash your hands, keep your distance, and I'll see you tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Bye, everyone.